We've all been there. You write some code just to find out that later there is a logic error which you spend hours trying to track down. A lot of these mistakes can be avoided as long as you make sure you don't do the following. Default function arguments. Let's say that you've got a function called foo and that has a default argument of bar which is set to an array. Now when you append to the array inside of the function call and then you call the function multiple times, what would you expect to happen? You would expect to get baz inside of every single output, right? But what do you actually get? As you can see, it actually appended to the array every single time and it only seems like one array was created. So why is that? Well, it's because the array is actually a mutable object, so it only gets created once. A common workaround for this would be to set the argument to none at first and then have an if statement for saying if bar is equal to none, then you make it into an array. Scope rules. Take a look at this program and think about what might be wrong with it. Well, Visual Studio Code actually helps us a little bit and says that X is undefined. But why is that, since X is actually in the global scope? This comes down to the Python scope resolution, which is based on the LEGB rule, which is a shorthand for local enclosing global built-in. And what this means is that X will be scoped to this foo function and it will ignore any other definitions of X outside of it. This is why it's saying that X is undefined and this will give you an error. The incorrect use of class variables. This might seem like an innocent little program because at first we have B and C which inherit from A and A just has a class variable called X. So now when we print out the results, as we can see we get 1, 1, 1, which is expected. But what if we start setting the variables to something different? For example, in b.x, we're going to change it to a value of 2. What do we get now? 1, 2, 1. That's fine as well. Everything seems to be going well, right? Well, what about setting a.x? Now, if we set this to 3, we would expect A to be 3, B to be 2, and then C to be 1. But that's not what we get. We get 3, 2, and then 3 again. So why is that? This comes down to the way that Python handles class variables using the method resolution order. So in the above code, when there's no attribute X in the C class, what Python will do is it will actually look in the base class and see that a.x is set to 3, and that's why we get 3 as a result. This can lead to undefined behavior occasionally, so what I would suggest you do is instead instantiate the C class something like this, and then when we set X on the C class to 4, we get 4 and everything works as expected again. Modifying the list whilst iterating over it. Let's say that we have a list of numbers and we iterate over it because we want to delete every odd number inside of the list. Now, this is the incorrect way to do it because when we actually iterate over the list and delete an item in it, this range is going to still be at 10. So if we delete the second number, then the list actually is going to only be the length of 9. And when we get to the 10th element, it's not going to exist and we're going to get a list out of range exception, which I can show you we do right here. Instead, I suggest you create another list and then simply append your new items to it, and then you can get rid of the list above. Circular module dependencies. So we've got a module A which imports module B, and then module B which imports module A. Now this is what's known as a circular dependency because B cannot exist without A, but A on the other hand cannot exist without B, and this will cause an error because when we try to run a.py, Python recognizes that it's a circular dependency because it has to keep importing itself, and it throws an exception instead. So how can we actually solve this? What we can do is we can actually scope the imports to the functions themselves, and now when we run a.py, everything's working as expected again. Let me know if you enjoyed the video by smashing that like button, and I'll see you in the next one.